Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cooking with Friends. My name is Cynthia Triolo, and today the topic of this video is called Brewed to Perfection. So a while ago when we were talking about what to do for the month of May, we kind of discussed ideas about making tea and doing that sort of thing, which kind of tempted to be a little bit harder not in person. So actually what I thought I would do is do a cooking demo on cooking with tea, using tea in maybe some unusual ways. We're going to make a tea bread. That's what we're going to start with, using Earl Grey tea. We're going to make a syrup with mint tea that we're going to serve with pineapple. And we're going to make a compote with dried apricots and oolong tea. So I do have my teas steeping now because they need to steep for about 15 minutes and then kind of cool off before we use them. So I'm at that point now, but I'll walk you through everything as we do it. So first, what I'm going to make is the Earl Grey tea bread, and I'm calling it the Earl Grey tea bread. And it's flavored with Earl Grey tea and also some lemon, because Earl Grey has a lot of citrusy notes from the bergamot that's in it. Quite delicious, and I'm sure you all tried it before. So I have my ingredients all measured out in this bowl. I have my flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt, and I'm just going to whisk this together so that that's ready to go. I have my butter, and I'm going to use my stand mixer to do this. I have a paddle here that's got flexible rubber on the outside, which really helps scrape the bottom of the bowl and make sure that you get everything mixed in perfectly. I don't use it for everything, but for something like this where I'm going to cream some butter with some sugar, it works great. So I'm going to use that. Here's 6 tablespoons of softened butter. I've had it out since this morning. You can hopefully see that it's pretty soft. I'll put this aside. And I have my sugar here ready to go. That's all measured out. But what I'm going to do is zest lemon into the sugar, and we're going to cream that with the butter. So I have a zester, my lemon, and I'm just scraping over the top of the bowl, and I just want to get the outer rind of the lemon. I'm being really careful not to go into the white pithy part because that's a little bit bitter, and all the essential oils of the lemon are actually located right on the outside. So make sure you wash your lemons. I'm using organic lemons, so I don't have to worry about pesticides or anything like that going into our food. And once I get this ready, I'm going to start my mixer. And we'll get going. So there's my zest into my sugar. Put that aside. I'm going to start my mixer. Makes a little bit of noise. I'll take my spatula. And I'm going to add the sugar to that. So I want it nice and light and fluffy. I'm going to save this bowl. Now, here I have the milk, the cup of milk with a tablespoon of Earl Grey tea. I'm using loose leaf tea, and I put a tablespoon of it in. And let me just show you what this looks like. So this is the loose Earl Grey tea. You can still see the tea leaves in there. It's kind of dark. and flaky. So there's some lighter color leaves in there too. But this is what I'm using for this recipe. So I've had this steeping for about 15 minutes. I put the tea in with the milk and warmed it up just a tiny bit so that the tea would actually steep. And now I have to strain it. So I have my strainer. I'm going to use this bowl that I had the sugar in just for ease of use. And you'll be able to see in this glass bowl that the milk has turned quite dark. From steeping. And I'm going to press out any of the liquid that still remains in the tea. Shut this for a minute just because I know it's noisy. So here's my bowl of steeped milk steeped with Earl Grey tea. That's going to go into our mixture here. I've got my flour ready. I've got my egg that I always like to crack in a separate bowl just to make sure I don't get any shells in. I never want to crack it on the side of my mixer. That would be a problem. If there were shells in there, I'd have a hard time finding them. So got my egg ready. I've got some vanilla extract. So this is vanilla extract that some of you may remember a while ago we had done a class on pantry items. And one of the things that we did was we made vanilla extract using Maker's Mark and vanilla beans, which are in here, and they've been steeping. I've had this for, makes kind of quite a while. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that into my egg. Quite strong, so we'll be ready to go. And the other thing I need to do is I have some a quarter cup of plain Greek yogurt here that I'm going to add to my milk. And give that a stir. Actually, I'm going to use my little whisk. To get that incorporated. So now that the butter and the sugar are ready, it's nice and light and fluffy. I'm going to see if I can show you what this looks like. In my mixer. So light and fluffy, it's definitely lightened in color. So now, what I'm going to do is add the egg and the vanilla to it. Just until it's mixed. Turn it down on low, and I'm going to alternate my flour with my milk mixture by thirds. So what that means is I'm going to do a third of the flour and a half of the milk, another third of the flour, the rest of the milk, and then I'm going to end with the flour. So you always want to begin and end with your flour. And I'm going to, like I said, turn this on low. My flour goes in. Half of the milk mixture. Third of the flour. The rest of the milk. And the rest of the flour. And I want to just mix this until it's combined. It doesn't take very long. And I'll use my larger spatula to just make sure I have a good mixture. Scrape the paddle off, making sure I get everything. Now you notice using this paddle with the rubber edges, I didn't really have to stop and scrape down the bowl because the edges are kind of doing that for me. So let me take this off the mixer. My mixer tends to stick this way. I'm just going to give it a quick stir. Sometimes I have to bang it, or I have to ask for help to get it off. It's a really old mixer. And I'll have my husband come over and do that while I put this away. I don't know what it is about me, but sometimes I cannot get the bowl off the mixer. So, anyway, here's my batter. Just another stir. I have my oven set to 350 degrees. And I'm going to take, actually I'm going to use the paper that the butter came in. And I have my loaf pan. And I'm going to grease the pan with that, just not to waste anything. And that looks good. So pretty simple, basic creaming method with the butter and the sugar, and the basic alternating method with the flour and the liquid. So I'm gonna pour the batter into the pan. Making sure I'm getting it all. And that looks good to me. I'm just gonna smooth it out. Give it a little tap, and it's ready to go in the oven as soon as I wash my hands. Okay, so in the oven it goes, 350. I'm doing it on the center rack in the oven, and it's going to take about 50 minutes before it's done. You can stick a knife or a toothpick in to make sure there's not too many crumbs attached, and then you'll know it's done. Once it's done, you want to cool it on a wire rack for about 10 minutes before you try to unmold it. So unmolding it, usually I shake the pan a little bit and make sure it's loosened around all the edges. You might have to run a knife around it. And then I'll turn it down onto a wire rack and let it cool down that way. But I do have one that I've already baked. So I want to show you what the finished product looks like. I've got it on my wire rack, and here's the Earl Grey tea bread. Now, one of the things that we can do, and I'll do this now, is to make a glaze for it. So I'm going to melt a little bit of butter in the microwave. Just for a few seconds. I have my confectioner's sugar here that has a pinch of salt in it. And now I'm going to do some lemon zest and some lemon juice in this as well. So I'll take my cake and put it over here. I'm going to scrape. There's still a little bit of zest left on this lemon. Now you always want to zest the lemons if you're using the juice. Zest the lemon first. Just to give it a little bit more of a lemony flavor. And then I'm gonna use some juice as well. And the butter, which I'll get. Give that a few more seconds. I take my knife, add some lemon juice. I'm watching kind of carefully so I don't get seeds in there. You can do this over a strainer also. Oops. And my butter's nice and melted. I'm going to add that as well. And I'll use a spoon to stir it. It doesn't take much liquid to make a nice glaze using confectioner's sugar. This is still a little bit stiff, so I'm going to add a little bit more lemon juice. And we're getting there now. In your recipe, I have you adding 2 tablespoons, and that's about what we're getting out of 1 lemon. You may need a little bit more. I think that should be good. So you can see I can drizzle it just like that off of the spoon. So the important thing here is that you want to have your cake on a rack on top of a pan to catch the drips, right? So that's what I have set up here. And I'm just gonna drizzle some of the glaze all over it. And you can decide if you want to spread it. I kind of like the way it looks just like this. And that's, I'm going to leave it just like that. So let me tilt it a little bit so you can see. With some nice glaze on top. And we're going to put this off to the side and let it harden up a little bit until we're ready to serve it. So there's the Earl Grey tea bread for you. Now, the next recipe that I'm going to do, and these are really simple, more or less. Swipe up my board. Clean that off. Now, so this, the next recipe that we're going to do is the apricot oolong compote. So here I have my tea steeping in a pot. Here I'm using a tea bag, so that alleviates the problem of having to strain it. It's a little bit easier. And the rest of the ingredients. So I let this water come to just below a boil, and I added the tea bag to it, and it's been sitting off to the side for at least 15 minutes before we got started. So it's got a really nice aroma. The oolong, it's a little bit smoky. If you've never tried it, it's quite delicious. Most people like it served with milk. I like it that way, actually. So, but that's up to you. You can serve it with lemon or just plain. But I have my steeped tea here, and into this I'm going to add just a small amount of sugar and some cinnamon. And I'm going to add my apricots that I've chopped up, dried apricots. I've chopped them up into smaller pieces. So what would you do with this is always the question. I think that this goes really great with rindy cheeses, you know, something like a brie, Saint Andre, and you know what, some kind of bloomy rindy cheese that you might like. Goat cheese would be excellent with it. So we're going to add the apricots to it. And get a spatula. Just give this a stir. And I'm going to cook this down probably for about 30 minutes until it gets kind of syrupy and the apricots are nice and soft. It'll thicken up once it's cool. So we'll put this on the flame and let this go for a little bit, so that way I can show you at the end what it is going to look like. One of the things I always think about talking about when I'm doing these classes are the spatulas. So here I have a couple of different kinds, right? This is a silicone spatula, but it's all one piece. It doesn't come apart. The handle's nice and stiff. It's a little bit cupped. I like this one a lot. I use it all the time, and it's heat proof, more or less. Wouldn't leave it in a pot of something boiling. And then the other kind that we've all seen are also silicone, a little bit more flexible, but they come on a stick that you can, you know, pull apart to make sure you clean it. I'm not as big a fan of these just because they can, if you don't clean them correctly and dry them, they can get moldy on the inside. So I really like the one-piece ones, but I do have some of these too. So. And another kind of spatula I have is one that looks like this. That's also all one piece of silicone. This one's a little bit stiffer, and it actually has two ends that you can use depending, something smaller or something larger. So these work great too. Okay, so my apricot compost is on the flame and it's cooking. I'll put this aside for now and just let that go. I think I'll turn it up just a little bit. There we go. Okay, So there's the compote. The tea bread is in the oven. And the next thing I wanted to do was make a mint syrup that you would serve with pineapple. People have some trepidation about getting a whole pineapple and chopping it up, so I thought that would be one of the things. I can show you actually how simple that is to do. But let's get our syrup started. So in this pot, I've got my mint tea, also using tea bags. I think you can see it. It's hard to, if I tip it too much, I'm going to spill it. But I'm doing tea bags here with this. And I'm actually only making half of the recipe this time, but you've got a full batch. So here, that's why I'm only using 2 tea bags in this. So I brought the water to a boil and I put the tea bags in, and I set this aside also to infuse for about 15 minutes. And I'm gonna squeeze out the tea bags. It's not hot anymore. So I'm gonna add the sugar and some lime zest to this. I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the lemon, but this time we're using limes. And I'm going to add some lime juice to this as well. Like I said, I'm just doing half the recipe, so I'm going to zest half of the lime. Limes typically don't have seeds in them, so you can squeeze with abandon. One of the things to know about using citrus like this, and if you want to use the juice, if you take them out of the refrigerator and let them come to room temperature, they'll be easier to juice. I'll add just a little bit more. And the next thing I want to add, a little bit of honey, not much. And then I want to add a slice or two of fresh ginger. So I've got a knob here of fresh ginger, which I tend to always have in my refrigerator. You can freeze them also. But I wanted to show you a neat trick in terms of peeling it. And I'll use my measuring spoon since they're right here. You don't need to use a knife. You can take a spoon and just scrape along the skin, and it comes right off. So if you're peeling a lot of ginger, this is a kind of easy way to do it. It gets around the knobs. You can kind of get in there. If you can see. That. It's a pretty simple way to peel a piece of fresh ginger. And I'm just going to take this is kind of a smaller piece. I'm just going to take a couple of slices and add it to my syrup just to give it a nice flavor. I'm going to stir this around. And I'm going to put this on the heat. And I'm going to let it simmer for about 5 minutes or so. So let's do that. Now I'll get to move this out of the way, and I wanted to take a minute to show you how to peel and slice a pineapple. So here's my pineapple. You know, I know in the stores you can buy them already peeled and cored. They tend to be a little more expensive that way. I'm just giving my compote a little bit of a stir. So they tend to be a little bit cheaper to buy them whole. So I've got my cutting board. I'm using a serrated knife. This one is my famous offset knife. This is my favorite knife of all the ones that I own. And I'm going to slice off the top. You can set that aside. You can use this for garnish if you like. It would look nice in the middle of a big platter. I'm going to slice off the bottom as well, just so I have a nice flat surface to rest this on. And then I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to follow along I don't want any of the eyes left in there. You don't want those spiny things that you'll have to eat. So I just follow along the contours of the pineapple. Make sure I get the bottom and all the eyes. So you can see that a serrated knife makes it really easy to do. It cuts right through it. So this, I'm going to compost all of this. It can go right into my compost pile. So let me move this, and then I'll get a clean cutting board so I can cut this. So let's put this on the board. I'll move this out of the way. Okay, so everything's simmering nicely here. My compote's looking pretty good. My syrup for the pineapple is looking good. All right, so now I have my pineapple that I've peeled, and I'm going to slice it in half. And then I'm going to slice it in quarters. I find that's the easiest way to take the core out, which is pretty hard. So now I'll just slice down and remove the core. There. Pretty simple. I'm going to put this piece off to the side. We'll have that later for dessert. And I'm just going to do some really thin slices of the pineapple. There we go. Great. And I'm going to turn my syrup off for the pineapple. And actually my compote is looking pretty good. It's thickening up, definitely. There's not a ton of water left, and I'm going to let this go just a little bit longer. So let me show you how I would plate this. First I need to wash my hands. Use whatever plate or platter that you have. I'm going to use this one. It's quite vintage, very old. Give it a wipe and make sure it's clean. And I'm going to arrange my pineapple on the plate. Just like that. And you can arrange it any way you like. I'm just gonna do this, and if I cut up the rest of the pineapple, then I would have, you know, rows of pineapple here on my platter. Actually, why don't I just go ahead and do that so you get the full effect. This is an especially good thing to do with a pineapple that maybe isn't as sweet as you would like it. Sometimes they're so sweet they taste like candy all on their own. So if I had a pineapple like that, I might not do the syrup on it. But I think for this time of year, and I did taste this, I think I could use it. So I'm not doing this very artfully, but you get the idea, I think. So I've got my pineapple arranged, and I just need to get a pot holder because my pan gets quite hot. So here's my syrup. If you were here, you would be able to smell the mint and the ginger and the lime in here. And I'm just gonna now, because we're doing this as a video, I don't really have time to let this cool. I didn't make one ahead of time. But what I would do is strain it, strain the ginger out of it, and put it in the fridge until I'm ready to serve it. So you can have, you know, this already. You can make it the day before. I wouldn't cut up the pineapple until you're about ready to use it. And then when you're ready to serve, the syrup will be a little bit thicker than it is now just because it's cold. But I'm going to just drizzle it over the pineapple. Remember, this is the mint tea that I'm using. A little pretty much goes a long way. And there you go, the pineapple with a mint tea syrup. So I think it's delicious. I think you'll really enjoy it. Something a little bit different, something to do with tea that you might not normally think of. And I would definitely serve this as a dessert. I think serving this along with the Earl Grey tea bread would be really great with a nice cup of tea. After a nice lunch, I think it's the perfect way to do it. So So let me put this aside. I'm going to turn off my compote so I can show you this. So that hasn't been a half an hour. It could go a little bit longer, but you'll have to watch it because you can see that a lot of the moisture has been absorbed by the apricots. And like I said, this I would serve with a really nice goat cheese or a brie with crackers and just a little bit of the compote served on top. So I think that would be a really great way to use this. And this also, once it's cooked, I mean, you don't want to serve it obviously hot. You can also make this the day ahead and put it in the refrigerator, chill it. It'll thicken up even more and be almost spreadable. And then you can put it out on a nice platter with cheeses and crackers, and maybe some other savory things, and this on the side for people to use. I think that would be a really great and unusual addition. So let's put this off to the side. We have our syrup. I'll move away. And let's go back to the tea bread because I want to slice it so you can see what it looks like. And here it is. And the glaze has hardened up a little bit, like I can touch it and it's not coming back up on me. So I'll just keep this over the pan, however. And I'll take again my trusty serrated knife that I used, and we'll just cut a couple of slices. So that you can see what it looks like already sliced. So I have my little dessert service here. So I'm going to make some tea and I'm going to serve the tea bread alongside of it, just like that. So that's it. Pretty simple. You'll get the recipes in your email when this becomes available in May. I think this would be great for Mother's Day if you're making brunch for mom or for yourself. I think that any of these items would be really great to serve for that. But I think you can enjoy it every day. So there you go, brewed to perfection. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to the friends for making all of this possible. And I hope if you're not a member, you'll join. And if you are, thank you for that. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.